Hello and welcome to the Why Wasn't It Better podcast. I'm your host, Patrick Darms.
And I'm your co-host, Anton Pras.
Anton, this is going to be a fun one today, and I appreciate you powering through the cold that you have.
You know what? I feel like this is a very important episode. It's a very movie to cover today.
I have to admit, I was semi-excited to watch this film, and in retrospect, I shouldn't have been.
I mean, when you have one of the best actors of all time attached to the film, and it's a sequel to one of the best films of all time, you'd get a little excited. I think a lot of folks would get a little excited with that on paper.
If you just knew that, yes. The red flag for me was that I don't know a single person besides the two of us that has seen this movie.
Yep, it's a pretty clear indicator.
But, what are you going to do? Some really quick admin. If you want to check out more of our content, our YouTube channel has various levels of subscription that you can sign up for. And we, of course, have a Patreon if you want to support us directly. That's patreon.com/WWIB official. You can get access to things like ad-free episodes a week early. And for a more premium level of subscription, you can request a film for us to review directly. That's right. If you pay us a specific amount of money, we will cover a film of your choosing, good, bad, or somewhere in between. And with that being said, why don't you intro this for us, Anton?
In the long-delayed sequel to Chinatown, private investigator and war veteran Jake J.J. Gitz is hired by real estate developer Jake Berman, who suspects his wife of infidelity. After Berman shoots his wife's lover, who happens to be his own business partner, Gitz is drawn into a web of conspiracy and deceit involving the oil reserves beneath Los Angeles. While investigating, Gitz hears a voice from his past that causes him to revisit a traumatic case in Chinatown. Released on August 10th, 1990 by Paramount Pictures, directed by Jack Nicholson, screenplay by Robert Towne, based on characters created by Robert Towne, starring Jack Nicholson, Harvey Keitel, Meg Tilly, Madeline Stowe, Eli Wallach, Reuben Blades, Frederick Forrest, David Keith, and Richard Farnsworth. With a budget of $25 million, so $60 million adjusted for inflation, and a box office of $10 million, so $24 million adjusted for inflation. Today's film is The Two Jakes. Now, Pat, we said a little bit in the intro, this is a sequel to one of the most famous films of all time. Why was The Two Jakes chosen today?
Specifically for that reason, and it's a film and a sequel that I doubt many people have even heard of. Yeah, Chinatown is one of the most famous films of all time. It's realistically one of the 50 greatest films I've ever seen. I saw it a couple of times starting in college. For reasons you could probably guess, I tend to avoid most of Roman Polanski's works. You can kind of grandfather this one in because this was released before, let's call it, Polanski's legal issues in 1977. It's probably not a hot take to say this is his greatest contribution to cinema. I haven't seen Chinatown that many times just because it's not the easiest film to watch. It's kind of a downer.
That's one way to put it.
Yeah. So I was probably aware that there was a sequel, but it's just not something you ever think about. I never got around to seeing it because, like I said, I don't know anyone who's seen this movie. I haven't really read anything positive about it. I'm sure that you can go on some corner of the internet and find people who like this film and will carry its torch. But, much like a film that we covered a couple seasons ago, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, Sword of Destiny, this is a legacy sequel to a really beloved, famous IP that, frankly, no one's really aware of. And that alone, I think, is why I put it on our list of films to cover. You don't have any history with this film, do you?
I mean, of course, being a huge Jack Nicholson fan, him being my favorite actor of all time, I know about Chinatown. But when it comes to this film, no history at all. And that speaks volumes considering it's tied to one of his greatest performances of all time.
Right. It's possible that this is the most obscure film we've covered so far on the podcast, right?
I think so.
It's in competition for that award.
Yeah, and when we dive into the behind the scenes, it is one of the most obscure production histories I've ever heard about.
For sure. So this came out in 1990. So it's a fairly old film at this point, 35 years. 1990 was noteworthy for being the same year that another legacy sequel was released, a sequel to a film made also in 1974, like Chinatown. I'm talking about The Godfather Part 3, also released by Paramount Pictures. Neither of us like that film very much. We're going to be covering The Godfather 3 at some point. But it was a success at the time. It made a good deal of money, and whether you like it or not, that film has a legacy. The Two Jakes does not. It's the total opposite.
Yeah, it's completely unknown and forgotten.
And it's not even a generational thing, because I think you did the same thing I did. I asked my dad about it. I was like, have you heard of this? Have you seen the sequel to Chinatown? And he was like vaguely aware of it, but he had never seen it.
And when I asked my dad about it, and if it was good, all he did was shrug.
So that alone makes it worth covering.
Yeah.
Like, why is this movie so forgotten? Again, I think the Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, Sword of Destiny comparison is perfect.
And I think this is really interesting because this is still, one could argue with the whole streaming angle when it comes to Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, Sword of Destiny, and the Netflix distribution into streaming. That's one angle, at least, that leads into less people knowing about the film versus a major release. This was released during the heyday of big films being released in theaters.
This did get a major release. You're right. And when I say obscure, I really do mean it, because this doesn't even have a negative reputation like something like Heaven's Gate or Waterworld or something a little bit more recent like the Justice League, right? Like there's no jokes about this movie. It's completely irrelevant. It might as well not exist. The reviews for it weren't bad. I was kind of surprised doing the research for this. It has a 63% Rotten Tomatoes score, which is okay, right? Like not disaster level bad.
Not disaster level bad, but you know what? I think when we go into more of the story and the production, it was a bit of a disaster, wasn't it?
It was. We can get into that now. We're not even going to actually officially cover the production history as its own thing. We're going to do that as a discussion point, because if you want to talk why wasn't it better, number one reason is the production of this film. The making of this film was a very turbulent, multi-year, drama-filled process.
Yeah, I mean, before we dig into it, are there a few words that you would use to describe the production history?
Soap opera.
Self-servicing.
Self-indulgent.
Hubris.
Unnecessary.
Long.
Comical.
Cocaine.
I think cocaine played a role. How much you want to credit cocaine for this film's creation and existence? It's probably worthy of its own documentary.
There are a few YouTubers that did cover just an analysis of the making of, which all of this information is also readily available online. But, yeah. I mean, okay, I guess we want to backtrack, right? Like, okay, you got Chinatown, one of the biggest movies of all time.
Yeah, so that comes out in 1974. Chinatown is interesting for so many reasons, but it's one of those films that its reputation not only really didn't change over time, it may have just gotten better. It was pretty much regarded as an instant classic when it came out.
Yeah.
It made pretty good money. It got all the awards attention, and 50 plus years later, it's still considered one of the greatest films ever made. Paramount was aware of this. They knew what they had at the time, right? Paramount was, of course, run by Robert Evans. He owned the rights to the film at the time, and he was trying to get a sequel made almost immediately.
Ooh, titan of the industry, Robert Evans.
He really is. We're going to talk about him throughout this episode. If anyone's not familiar with good old Bob Evans, he is certainly someone worth reading about. A little controversial guy, but you're right, like a real titan of the industry. He is pretty much the reason that Paramount was saved from bankruptcy in the late 60s when he took over the studio. He's responsible for, of course, the original Chinatown. He's responsible for The Godfather getting made. Books have been written about this guy.
Yeah, he's featured in a lot of films about films about Hollywood and Hollywood's history. Yeah. You see his name all around the Paramount lot. Like you said, he's basically why Paramount's still standing to this day.
Yeah, he died a couple years ago. He was pretty old. He had I would say, a very colorful lifestyle. It's amazing he lived to I think he was well into his 80s. It's kind of a miracle he lived that long.
Yeah, but at his peak, one of the most, or probably the most well-connected producer in all of Hollywood.
At the time, in his heyday in the 70s, yeah,
Yeah.
I would say yeah,
Yeah,
he was the biggest producer in the industry.
yeah,
For sure. So he was trying to get a sequel made pretty much immediately. He wanted Nicholson back, for the role of J.J. Gittes or Gitz, depending on who's talking in the film. Dustin Hoffman's name was attached at the time. That would have been really interesting because this would have been, peak Dustin Hoffman as well.
yeah.
I assume his name was going to be attached with the other Jake role, right? Jake Berman, I would think.
We're also talking about the 70s, by the way.
Right. This is like 1976 now, where we are in the timeline. But it just never got off the ground. I couldn't confirm this, but I think this is pretty easy reading between the lines. I would imagine Roman Polanski's legal troubles in 1977 played a huge role in this delay.
Yeah.
Because they wanted him back, of course. He had done such a phenomenal job directing the first one. If you're Bob Evans, you of course want Polanski back, and he had to flee the country for reasons you can read about.
But it's Hollywood. Not having the same legendary director is not going to stop production.
No. What is also worth pointing out is that Nicholson himself was very personally invested in getting the sequel made too. So fast forward all the way to 1984. Robert Towne, who of course famously wrote the screenplay for the first film, he won an Academy Award for his effort. It's always cited as one of the most famous, best screenplays of all time. He wrote the screenplay for the sequel. He was originally interested in directing it, but what hung this up is that Bob Evans wanted to act in the film in the Jake Berman role. I'm talking about the role that eventually would be played by Harvey Keitel. Yeah, Bob Evans, who was not an actor, he wanted to play the role.
Now, he did have a very short acting career.
A successful acting career?
No, he had an acting career.
How many films did he act in?
I believe it was like 2 or 3. It was a very, very short career.
I'm sure he cast himself in those roles.
This was pre-producer Bob Evans, but at the same time...
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
He was dabbling. Okay.
Yeah, but look, he
wasn't an actor, safe to say.
He's not an actor, no.
Although if you'd see him interviewed, you would think he was an actor. But anyway, so Nicholson, Evans, and Towne, the troika, right? The triumvirate, if you want to use a Roman Empire term.
Yeah, the Kavorka.
Right. They formed their own production company to make this film. They were going to make it independently. They didn't take upfront salaries. They were going to share the profits. Paramount gives them a $12 million budget. We're still in 1984, by the way. Fast forward a little bit to early 1985. This is getting made. They officially cast Kelly McGillis, Kathy Moriarty, Dennis Hopper, Joe Pesci, and Harvey Keitel. They were going to start shooting in May of 85. They had sets built. This was going to happen in 85. Yep. But keeping up with our soap opera story, Towne apparently had a lack of confidence in Bob Evans' acting abilities. They got into a huge argument. Evans objected to having to get a period-specific haircut. Apparently, it was going to expose his plastic surgery scars. I'm not making this up.
No, it's awkward.
So, yeah, there was a big argument. It delayed filming. A witness told Vanity Fair, in the morning, nothing happened. They said the weather was wrong, but you could tell the plug had been pulled, end quote. So drama on the set. Problems started to develop personally between Nicholson, Towne, and Evans, right? In addition to what I was just talking about. The crew filed grievances against them. There was a $500,000 grievance from the Screen Actors Guild and Directors Guild. There was $1.5 million spent on sets, props, and costumes. Now the project got postponed indefinitely. At this point, looking for additional money because Paramount was concerned at this point, understandably. Towne approached Dino De Laurentiis to help finance the film. He is a very well-known producing name in the industry. He's another major character, right? I don't know if he's quite on the level of Bob Evans, but he's close, right?
Especially with a name like that, you're a larger-than-life personality.
Dino De Laurentiis?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. We've covered a couple of his films already, I think. Hannibal, maybe like 1 or 2 others.
But safe to say, Bob Evans takes the cake.
He does. He kind of stands alone. De Laurentiis did not end up participating in this. So by this point, McGillis was still cast, but Harrison Ford was going to take over as Jake Gittes, and Roy Scheider was going to play the other Jake. That's really interesting to think about. They were going to release this version of the film somewhere in 1986, and John Huston, who of course played the villain Noah Cross in the first film, who was primarily a director, he was going to be directing, according to the rumors, but Robert Towne later denied this. I don't know how realistic that was because Huston was quite old and he died in 1987.
Yeah, and I'm sure Robert Towne would want to deny any opportunity or anything that would block his opportunity to direct.
Yeah, and he's not a director either, too. So like him directing this would have been pretty odd.
No, but that's where it kind of comes down to the drama of it all. An actor or a failed actor turned producer that wants to get his star to shine, a screenwriter who wants the opportunity to direct, and an all-time great actor that then finds an opportunity to direct something that he's always wanted to do.
Right. Say that one 5 times. So quick sidebar on Evans. He was convicted of cocaine trafficking in 1980. And it doesn't have anything to do directly with this film's production, but in 1984 he was the producer behind a very, very expensive flop called The Cotton Club, directed by Francis Ford Coppola. That had something like a budget of $50 million in 1984, and it didn't even make half that at the box office. It's one of the most famous bombs of the era, and that set Bob Evans back considerably. That damaged his reputation. By this point, now that we're entering like the late 80s in our timeline, Evans did not have the reputation that he did in the 70s. His career is kind of going like this.
Yeah. And the strongest star of that trio, still Jack Nicholson.
Yeah, he's going strong. His career's fine.
Yeah, he's good.
Yeah, he wins his second Oscar in 1983 for Terms of Endearment. He never really slows down. By this point, Paramount had had enough. They pulled the plug. They took a $4 million loss. A company called the Cannon Group, who are no longer around, they tried to get involved, but that didn't work, and the distribution rights reverted back to Paramount. By now, the project was officially in development hell. But then Jack Nicholson steps in and offers to direct the film, as well as star in it. He also rewrote Robert Towne's screenplay, which he later described as, quote, really only about 80% ready, end quote. And I have to wonder about that 80%. Think he was rounding up?
Probably.
By the time the film entered production, Robert Towne wasn't involved. He officially received the only screenwriting credit, but he was out by this point.
Yeah.
And I'm really curious how much of the final script that we see in the film was actually written by Towne as opposed to Nicholson. I don't know if we'll ever know the actual breakdown.
Yeah, I would only, this is just my conjecture, the way that the story is written with so much emphasis on heavy narration, I feel like this was probably a lot of Nicholson's fingerprints.
And that was to the film's detriment, would you say? So they start filming in LA in April of 89. It lasts until June. There were numerous reshoots. Originally, the film was going to be released by Christmas 1989, but there were so many reshoots and I assume rewrites that the release date was pushed back to August of 1990. Despite all of this, Nicholson insisted that it came in perfectly on schedule and perfectly on budget, which is a total lie. But I get it, Jack. Robert Evans was also completely uninvolved at this point. His name is on it as producer, but as far as I can tell, he was never even on set.
Yeah, and basically over the course of, over 15 years, you have friendship ruined between...
Yeah.
Yeah.
This permanently ended the relationship between Nicholson, Towne, and Evans. In a 1998 interview, Towne told the interviewer that he hadn't spoken to Nicholson in over 10 years.
Yeah.
So the final cost of this film, Anton, was $25 million. That is more than double what Paramount initially planned for.
Well, they decided, at least they went forward to release it, and
they did.
A very unceremonious release, it seems like.
August is a very unceremonious time to release a film, especially when this is a so-called prestige film.
Yeah, if it's something where they just know it's going to get nominated, probably you can release it in December.
That's what they did with The Godfather 3. That came out on Christmas. That is clearly the film that Paramount was pushing for awards consideration that year. They got
Yeah.
it. I mean,
Yeah.
Godfather 3 got nominated for Best Picture somehow.
Politics.
Yeah. Oh, I can't wait to cover that film.
But August, that's a weird time to release a film for.
Well, completely bombed. I mean, you said the box office numbers in the intro. $25 million budget, made 10. 10.
Yeah.
So summing this up, the production rate, anything but smooth. We have an unfinished screenplay, a lot of burned money, a lot of actors who backed out. You know, just looking at that might have been cast. There's some good names in there.
Yeah, but we still kept Keitel.
We kept Keitel. I don't know if the role changed though. It sounds like he was originally going to play someone else. I don't know. There's a lot of start and stop here, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, but we are already touching on it. Paramount clearly didn't believe in this film.
But this film was getting released. Nicholson was getting his opportunity to direct the sequel to one of his best films of all time. Nothing was stopping the train at this point.
No. I suppose we should be grateful in some way. Number 2 reason why this wasn't better, the storytelling. Now, if they made this in the early 2000s, they could have called this Two Jakes, Two Chinatown.
Two Jakes, Too Furious, maybe?
Yes. Yeah. I don't know how much you can put this on Town or Nicholson like we were talking about. The screenplay I find a little confusing because this film is in some ways like a partial retread of the first one, right?
Absolutely. Everything that they go through in the film, I feel like Town had probably put together the story structure. And it was up to whoever went in for rewrites to really fill it out. And by the time Town had probably left the project, it's where someone who's not as experienced with proper screenwriting or storytelling could make a lot of mistakes. Because it still has the same structure, I think, like you said, of Chinatown itself. And you see a lot of half-baked concepts in the story.
It's borrowing a lot from the first film. And yet, there were a lot of things in here that didn't make sense to me. One of the cardinal sins that a sequel can commit is, you and I have agreed many times previously on this podcast that a successful sequel should not require you to watch the first one. This movie, The Two Jakes, if you hadn't seen the original Chinatown, you'd be completely lost.
Yeah, like if for whatever reason you see Jack Nicholson going through his PTSD episodes with a callback to the scenes from Chinatown, with the direct scenes from Chinatown, you'd have no idea what's going on.
You're right about the direct scenes. Faye Dunaway's voice is heard. Mm-hmm. You see pictures of her character as like actual stills used by Nicholson's character, you know, Gittes in this film. Mm-hmm. And then you have, to your point, actual flashbacks from the first film. And they're pretty quick.
They're pretty quick, but not a lot of context for the viewer if they hadn't seen Chinatown previously.
Right. Definitely not much context there. And it is in some ways it is a recycling of the plot from the first film. They're just swapping water rights for, I guess, like oil, natural gas rights, right? Sort of.
Oil, natural gas, real estate, sure.
Right. Yeah, there's a real estate angle in there too, because the character Jake Berman, played by Harvey Keitel, he is a real estate developer who is building the equivalent of like a West Coast Levittown in, at the time, would have been a very rural part of Los Angeles County, right? Essentially the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, San Fernando Valley.
Right. What was in the San Fernando Valley in 1947? Nothing. Farmland?
Just farming, just tons of farming, which was also all of Hollywood. Lots of farming.
By the way, something we should include. This takes place 10 years after the first film.
Yeah, so we just finished with World War II.
Right.
Does not feel like that.
Oh, we'll talk about why a little bit later.
It really feels like the 90s.
In some ways, yes. In other ways, well, we'll get there. Once I read in the production history, doing the research is this, that Nicholson was quote unquote working with 80% of a screenplay. I was like, oh, yes, I can see that.
Yeah. And I think that's where you touched on it, some sort of similar undercover conspiracy that he needs to that Jake needs to uncover over the course of the film. Now, I think that to the film's credit, there was a unique angle to try to bring catharsis to Jake's character and kind of come full circle to maybe a just the feeling of loss and kind of this feeling of redemption that Jake felt like he needed considering what happened in the first film. I think that that's a really interesting storyline. I think that's something that maybe could have worked in like a novel or with a better screenplay, but the way it was addressed in this film, I think it was more of an afterthought that kind of drifted around with a very shoddy story.
It wasn't fully fleshed out.
Not at all. Like, not at all.
I found this to be confusing, but not in a deliberate way like you would get with something like a John Le Carre.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a John Le Carre story. You know, something like Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, where the first time you read that novel or watch the film, you're like, what just happened? This film is confusing, and I think the worst way. Now, that's not necessarily unusual for film noir, which this is what this is.
Yeah, this is actually beat by beat a very straightforward film noir, right?
Yeah, for the most part, yeah. Other than the weird connection to the previous film. Yes. But they're using a lot of cheap tricks to move the plot along. Like, did you count how many times does Gittes get knocked out? 3, 4?
Or when he knocks out other people?
Oh, you mean Madeline Stowe's character?
He just like puts his arm out.
So if we're going forward with the plot, right? It unfolds pretty quickly. The murder in the beginning happens super fast.
Yeah, everything that this film's about gets set up super quickly, almost uncomfortably quick.
Maybe bad editing.
Yeah.
You know, there's some awkward exposition in the opening scene.
It opens up with 2 shoes, right?
Yes.
And it's supposed to be just basically Jack Nicholson's character coaching Harvey Keitel's character on how to approach the conversation with a wiretap.
Yes, a literal wiretap, an actual like physical wire, which is kind of interesting because I didn't know that was a thing. It was an actual wire recording, which is how the wiretap term got started, I suppose. But yeah, so we get the title drop. Oh yeah, 2 Jakes.
Yeah, well now we get it. They do the thing.
Yeah. We get the shooting in the hotel room, which I had to like rewind and rewatch again because it happens really quick. It's just bang bang. You're like, what's going on? And then there's stuff like you said, the flashbacks from the first film. I just think it's a mistake to tie this so close to the first film. It's everyone who's watching this movie, right? If you're actually going to the theater in 1990 to see this film, I doubt you're a casual fan. Like chances are you've seen the first film and you're familiar with it.
Yeah, this is not just easygoing watching in the 1990s. Like this is not Land Before Time.
It's an early example of member berries.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's one of the early examples of prestige film member berries, like sequels that call back to previous much more successful films has always happened, especially in comedy. Think the Police Academy series or Family Vacation. But member berries for something like Chinatown, they don't do that with The Godfather.
No, they don't. For example, the character played by David Keith, how they have to explain his father was the character in the first film who shoots Evelyn Mulwray, the character played by Faye Dunaway. And it's like, okay, what is David Keith's character doing in this film other than
pissing off Jack Nicholson
and then pissing himself? When
that was such an uncomfortable scene.
When Gittes tells him to suck on his gun, suck on it.
Which, by the way, I don't think there's any context to like really just set that up.
It's also a really bad stunt double.
Yeah.
For Nicholson, because Nicholson wasn't flipping him over his shoulder, that's for sure. And then to move things along, we get a staple of a lot of film noir, which is the hard-boiled gumshoe voiceover narration, right? That was a last-minute addition due to the numerous reshoots. This may not surprise you to hear.
I'm sure the audience test groups kept saying, I have no idea what's going on.
It's pretty sloppy. I found some of his monologues borderline incoherent to the point where it actually, in the worst way possible, reminded me of Frank Drebin's voiceover from The Naked Gun.
It's a good call out.
She could melt a cheese sandwich from across the room.
It felt very out of place. Like there wasn't it wasn't complimentary to the storyline at all. I don't think that it would have improved the movie to not have it. Or maybe it would have improved the movie not to have the narration.
Did you notice in a couple scenes, it must have been just an editing mistake, it overlaps with actual dialogue? Like it was
Yes. Yeah.
inserted into the film like by accident? It's really sloppy.
Yeah, it is really sloppy.
There was a couple points I actually paused the film and rewound it because I wasn't sure if the audio was out of sync. I was like, wait, did he just talk over another character in voiceover? And it's like, yes, he did.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. But at the same time, like, I'm trying to think like other films with like voiceover narration that also goes over any character dialogue. I'm sure there's other examples, but it should usually be a stylistic choice. But in this case, like, it
I
just
don't I
seems
don't
really
think it
sloppy.
was. Yeah, I
It's
don't
just
think it
really
was.
sloppy.
So this shooting that takes place in basically the opening 5 minutes of the film, right? There's a wire recording that Nicholson, Giddis, the private investigator, and his associates have made, right? They have a recording of this shooting. And the second half of the film, I would say, is mostly centered around this particular wire recording, right? Various
Right.
individuals are trying to get their hands on it, right? We have the police, we have some of Jake Berman's associates who are the mafia, right? The mob, I guess. And then you
Yeah,
also
they don't make
have,
it clear.
they don't make it clear. That guy, Mickey Nice, played by Ruben Blades.
Yeah.
And then you also have, it's later revealed to be this oil executive, this oil baron played by Richard Farnsworth. He's trying to get his hands on the wire recording at one point, or he's sending people after it, right? But this is what I found confusing about it. The recording doesn't prove anything. Because the controversy of this shooting is what the police are trying to determine, and what Giddis ends up getting caught up in is, was this premeditated or not? Did Berman set this whole thing up so that he could bump off his business associate and inherit his half of the business, or was this a crime of passion? But the recording doesn't prove either one of those things. It's just an
No,
audio recording.
I'd say one could argue the lack of evidence could have been enough evidence that he wouldn't be convicted.
But the recording's not a smoking gun, so why are all these various individuals trying to get their hands on it if it doesn't prove anything?
I'd say all other parties involved have no idea what's on the recording.
But if it doesn't prove anything, what was stopping Giddis from just turning it over to the police? Or he wanted to crack the case first?
That was the most annoying thing. Like, why was he from the very get-go, he was so involved with not wanting to hit the press and not wanting to involve the police. He wanted to strike the case first.
Okay, that makes sense. And then we also have real estate fraud, oil rights, personal revenge. We have Giddis's unresolved trauma from the events of the first film that he's still trying to cope with.
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot of momentum to this plot. It just kind of meanders along. And again, if you don't have the context of the first film, this is incomprehensible.
Yeah, not only is it incomprehensible, it's just boring, because the way that a lot of the story gets played over time, it really does go at a sloth's pace. Would you agree?
Yeah, and it's not a short film. What is it, 142 minutes? 130,
Yeah.
138 minutes, something like that?
Yeah, it eats up the clock. And sometimes I feel like, Jack Nicholson's character is just retreading either the same conversations over and over again. And not in a way that seems like it's moving the plot forward, just either in ways that are spectacular or meant to capture the audience's attention, like during his very uncomfortable sex scene.
So there's some kind of large-scale conspiracy, right, involving the oil rights and the real estate development.
Yeah, good luck figuring that out.
I was going to ask you, what is the full extent of this conspiracy? Like, who's the mastermind? Is it the Richard Farnsworth character?
I think that's the implication, that Farnsworth wants the land, but it's not set up well, right? Because
no.
Presumably Harvey Keitel's character has the rights to the land, and the other half of his business partners, or whatever, the rest of the business, since his business partner has already died. So by blowing himself up at the end, everything gets entrusted to his wife.
But the oil baron was trying to get the rights from her in the first place, right? So what would stop him from continuing to try to get the land rights or mineral rights from her after He's dead.
Tune in to the Three Jakes.
Well, there was going to be a third one, which we'll talk about. There's also a lot of characters in this film, Anton. Too many.
Yeah.
We mentioned the David Keith character. He's not really relevant to the plot. What is the point of giving Jake Gittes a fiance?
It was such a throwaway. Complete throwaway.
I assume there was more stuff on the cutting room floor that feature her, but again, even her small presence in this film doesn't contribute anything.
Yeah, it's I think part of it is just trying to set up this is the life that Jake's character now has. Like, he's a member at a country club, he's a war veteran, he's engaged. So
but you don't see any of that stuff.
No, but it's all in dialogue. Like, I'm a member of the country club. They're going to break all my clubs.
Well, you see that part. You see him play golf with the other Jake.
Yeah, but when it comes to that world building, I see that as it's a very conscious decision to, within the dialogue, try to build out his character as this is how he's moved on with his life after the first Chinatown. But again, it's just in dialogue. There's no real depth to it. It's why, like, when you find out he has a relationship or he has a fiance, it just feels a little hollow because it's just a very quick scenes and never really addressed again. Right?
No, she appears she's on the phone with him early in the film, and then she appears at the end, and she's like, "We're through, and you can take your ring back," but it goes nowhere.
Yeah, it just doesn't go anywhere. If it's meant to represent that he's trying to move on despite his trauma, like, okay, like it doesn't seem like he's really learning much.
Then you have the character played by Eli Wallach. He plays the other Jake's lawyer, right? But you never see him interact with the other Jakes except towards the end in the courtroom. He pops up in a few scenes, really doesn't contribute anything.
Nope, not at all.
Tracy Walter's character, he apparently works for Jake Berman, right?
Yeah.
Sort of.
Like, I don't know in what capacity, he just knows a lot of stuff.
He later claims to have evidence of the oil baron drilling under Berman's land, right? And he gives it to Gittes at the gay bar, right?
Right.
Okay, but if he had proof of that, why wouldn't he just give it to Jake Berman? Why does he wait to give it to Gittes?
Because Berman's dying, and
but no one knew that.
Oh, that's right. Even he wouldn't know that.
Right, even Berman didn't know that until a couple days before the events of this film.
Oh God! And then we haven't even mentioned that angle of it.
Right. If any of the listeners can explain this plot to us, like the questions we're asking, like, I'm non-sarcastically asking for you to write in and explain it, because I watched this movie twice in the past week, and I don't find any of this stuff particularly clear.
I think one of the easiest things you could do with the storyline is take out the angle of him dying of, like, leukemia.
It's some kind of cancer.
Like, it does nothing for the story. It doesn't necessarily improve his motivation of why he wants to speed up the process at the end of the film.
He could have killed himself anyway for the same reason of protecting his wife.
Exactly. He didn't need to have that whole angle.
No.
It just added wasted time to the story.
Now here's the big question for you, Anton. Who's the real villain of this film? Who's the antagonist?
Oil Baron?
Is he? He's in one scene. I mean, because
is he the overarching villain?
You know what I'm going to say about this. The first film has a very clear villain. Now, I'm not saying this film needed a clear villain, but they present several characters to us as antagonists. We can run through them. You mentioned the oil baron. His name's Earl Raleigh. He's played by Richard Farnsworth. It's not even clear what he's doing is illegal.
Yeah, it's just more so he has very high interests in the land.
Right. He just wants land to drill for oil, which is, I don't see that as nefarious, right? It's like, okay. Then you have Harvey Keitel's character, Jake Berman.
Not a direct antagonist other than just shooting his business partner.
No, you're right. And it's confusing because at the end they turn him into some kind of like anti-hero victim with good intentions. He's like, "Oh, I just want to help my wife." He does kill his business partner in cold blood.
Yeah, it's kind of usually a shitty move.
Right. Then you have Berman's gangster friend, Mickey Nice, played by Ruben Blades.
He's not the big bad guy.
No, but he is presented as a villain several times throughout the film, and at the end he was trying to protect Berman.
Yeah, just an clear antagonist.
And then you have Madeline Stowe's character. She is the widow of the murder victim, Berman's business partner. She is antagonistic because she's initially threatening to sue Gittes, right? But then she ends up having sex with him.
that is one of the most useless storylines in the film
I don't know what the point of her storyline was.
because again, it was just a huge waste of time.
So, safe to say there isn't a real clear villain here.
No, and I think like if it wants to be distinct from the first film, we've seen or we've talked about films where sometimes there's not a clear villain, and it's very rare, but in those cases character development could be like the overarching thing that makes the film successful.
Well, it made the first film successful.
Yeah. But in this particular film, it just everything just felt so bogged down by the different storylines and lack of fleshed out characters that it was just ended up being more confusing. So just lack of villain or lack of antagonist to really understand what's going on is just another reason why this film just is very confusing.
Did he blow himself up at the end to make the land more valuable to his wife? Because it would have exposed the fact that there was oil and or gas underneath of it.
I thought that was the implication. Well, he already knew that was that there was gas underneath because right his what's his name did the thing with the soda.
But that was after he murdered his business partner.
It's true, but the answer yes, I'm sure that's
It's not clear.
yeah, I'm sure yes that is it. It's not only to ensure that his wife gets the land, but also to uncover the conspiracy of the gas that's being leaking into the land. Look, I think I told you this over before the episode or before our recording is that a better film, this was meant to be Jake Gitt's character looking into the mirror and seeing Jake Berman, who can close the loop and help him to really find catharsis and being able to help Faye Dunaway's daughter, something that he wasn't able to help Faye Dunaway with in her situation. So it was really a chance of redemption for Jake's character in this film. In a way, Jake Berman was a stand-in for Jack Nicholson's character. Again, if that sounds confusing, it's because it is. It's a half-baked idea that's been presented in this film that was not just, it was not resolved cleanly.
Did she even really need his help in this film?
No, it seems like she was fine.
Well, this is the nail in the coffin for me. The actual plot twist at the end, which is Kitty Berman, Harvey Keitel's character's wife,
Meg Tilly,
played by Meg Tilly. She is actually revealed to be Catherine Mulray, the daughter of Faye Dunaway's character from the first film, /sister, daughter/sister. How does Jake not recognize her? He's talking about her the entire time. Now, I'll give you the first couple times they interact. She's wearing big sunglasses, and then she's got the facial cream on. But after that, she looks exactly like her mother. They try to explain it away like, well, she dyed her hair.
it feels like if there's ever been a member berry storyline to the first Chinatown, it's like, oh, it's obviously.
It's one of the dumbest things. It's just one of the dumbest reveals I've ever seen in a film.
It's like, oh, of all the people that would be married to Jake Berman, of course it's going to be the daughter of this woman who I was involved with in the most traumatic case of my life. Right?
Yeah. Only 10 years before. Did she move away from Los Angeles and then move back, or was she there the whole time?
They didn't make it clear because part of me was like, has he not kept tabs on her?
I was going to ask the same thing. It's like, if he wanted to keep track of her, why didn't he just keep track of her? She wasn't hiding.
Yeah, if he cared so much and that's what's causing him pain in like this film, why doesn't he know what she's been up to?
And then at the end, she tries to hook up with him.
So gross.
I would say the worst thing about this film story is that, I think you said it earlier, it wasn't just confusing, it's boring. There's not a whole lot of tension in this movie.
There's not. There's weird cuts. There's really bad dialogue. There's moments that clearly it's trying to set itself up as dramatic, but ends up falling very flat. Whether it's scenes like Jack Nicholson exploding out of a car into getting unconscious and waking up to Kitty's character.
The first film had such a distinct sense of like paranoia and suspense.
Yeah,
you know, you were never sure who you could trust. This film, at no point does it feel like Gittes is in danger. And by the way, I'm including the scene where he survives the gas explosion because it's just weird.
Or even the scene when he's conversing with James Hong's character.
The James Hong cameo was strange to me because all it did was set up the orchid thing at the end for him to recognize the flower on her hairpin or her whatever that thing was, hair clip.
Yeah.
But it just made it dumber, in my opinion, because again, she looks exactly like her mother, and he still didn't recognize her.
Yeah. Maybe just worst investigator of all time.
There's no explanation for this about how like he didn't. As soon as you see Meg Tilly, you're like, oh, that's obviously Faye Dunaway's daughter from the
Yeah.
first film.
But no, that's even if it was obvious to the audience, to make it so that his character was ignorant to that fact or just could not realize it is just poor writing. He's an investigator. He was so deeply connected to what happened to him in the first film. It should be obvious.
It's 138 minutes. The pacing is glacial. Felt 20 or 30 minutes too long to me. The other parts of the production, too. Jerry Goldsmith is sorely missed. The score to this film is just pedestrian.
Nothing at all to write home about. Just very forgettable.
Now, granted, the bar is high. I was re-listening to Jerry Goldsmith's score for the first one a couple days ago. It really is one of the all-time great scores. It really is. It's one of Goldsmith's 5 best works, I'd say, up there with, Star Trek and Planet of the Apes. He's done too much work to even, mention, but it's gotta be up there. And then, so this film was shot by a very renowned director of photography named Vilmos Zsigmond. Vintage Los Angeles is a very aesthetically pleasing location, right? I think the exterior scenes look fine. The interior stuff looks like a TV movie.
Yeah, I mean,
flat.
It just looks cheap.
Yeah.
For the most part.
You mentioned James Hong's character, right? Khan. When Gittes meets him in the film, it's like, where are they? Are they at a garden center? Like, does he work at a garden center?
It seemed like a very ambiguous, like, what is it, a rooftop garden?
But where? Like, where are they?
No,
it's just not
in LA somewhere, presumably.
They're near the coast because you can see the ocean, but it's not really clear. I actually found this to be the biggest downgrade from the first film, which again, we're talking about a high bar. That's one of the best shot films ever, I think.
Yeah. Gorgeous looking.
Yeah, it was shot by a director of photography named John Alonzo. He had really mostly worked in documentaries before being hired by Polanski. He hadn't done a lot of film work. It's a pretty unique looking film, the first Chinatown. Not a whole lot of films look like that, because it's essentially a period piece, but it's not filmed like traditional film noir. It's lit very differently. It's a really just a great looking film, and this sequel, no,
this is not, especially this is the first Chinatown. Talk about on-set location and recreating that time period of Los Angeles. Fantastic, right? Set wise, the feel, the aesthetic. This one does not feel like a period piece.
No, and I think the biggest reason why is the costumes in this movie are awful.
Trash. It's just ambiguous, right? Or it's just generic.
Nicholson's peak lapels are wide enough to have their own sequel. In fact, his jackets, I don't understand it. I think I do. I think this had a lot to do with his weight.
That's why they're so baggy.
Baggy. He looks like a homeless guy that found a suit.
Yeah. I was going to say, maybe not like his jacket, but I felt like his pants were way too big.
All of it. He looked awful. I mean, we'll talk about his physical appearance in the next reason, but I mean, that is such a stark contrast to the original film when everything was really tight, neatly tailored.
Or, I mean, even in general for any character, nothing's inspired. Nothing really stands out of having what I would assume in that time period would look like. It just looks generic. It looks very generic, like detective story.
Yeah, I mean, so you mentioned the third film. It was apparently going to be titled Gittes versus Gittes, and it was going to be set in 1968 when no-fault divorce went into effect in California. Thank goodness they never made it.
That sounds awful.
You've heard the rumor about Who Framed Roger Rabbit, right? That was originally written as a sequel to Chinatown.
Yeah, and it's amazing because now that is film noir at its best.
It's real film noir. I think that's mostly been debunked, right? I don't think because it is based on a a novel, right?
Yeah, there is an original novel. I don't know how much of maybe even like the screenplay could have been adapted
I
and
don't
it
either.
fit very well. But I would not have wanted to watch a third sequel.
No, not at all. So we get some of the cast from the first film, right? Perry Lopez as Lou Escobar, the police captain.
Right.
James Hong, we mentioned. Joe Mantell as, Jake's assistant, Walsh.
Everyone's aged so much.
They have. They have. There's some of the same locations too, right? Which is like the
Yeah.
Orange Grove location. Roger Ebert gave us 3.5 stars.
It's why I don't it's why I tell myself I don't always have to agree with Roger Ebert
No.
or Ebert and Roper.
Most of the time I do, but
Yeah.
he said in his review, quote, every scene falls into place like clockwork, end quote. I don't know what film he watched.
It was the weekend that Roger Ebert also smoked a lot of weed.
You might be right. So, yeah, this came out same year as Godfather 3. Paramount obviously didn't promote this film because they dumped it off in August. Godfather 3 also starring Eli Wallach as Don Altobello. You remember that?
Yeah, of course.
You're just cringing. His character's so bad in that movie. Do you think that this would have been better if it had come out like around 1980? Like, would you have wanted to see this earlier? Like, made earlier?
This film?
The two Jakes.
Like, exactly as it was made?
Exactly as it was made, no. Because I'm assuming
Exactly.
Polanski would have been involved, right? If it had come out before 1980.
I think that's the thing with a question like that is, would I have wanted a better film? Of course I would have wanted a better film.
Right.
But
I guess
there's
it's a dumb question, I guess.
I mean, it's just so many things would have had to go right. Robert Towne, Bob Evans, and Jack Nicholson would still be friends to this day. Roman Polanski would be tied up with a bunch of legal troubles that are very unspeakable.
I think he might have been.
Yeah.
Knowing what we know about him. But actually, let me ask you a better question. Did Chinatown even need a sequel?
I don't think it did. I think it's fine where it is in history with its own film. But it's why, like, I've said it before, a great film could have a sequel and still stand on its own, and I'm open to it, but it's just difficult, and you'll be scrutinized forever if you fail.
This doesn't diminish the original for me at all.
No, but it's like, if Godfather 2 can do what Godfather 2 did, then there will always be a possibility for a prestige sequel, but it's so hard.
When we get to Godfather 3 eventually, I have no idea when we're going to get to that, but we will. I will spoil something for you now. Like, Godfather 3 almost ruins the first two for me. Almost. It doesn't, but it comes real close.
Yeah.
They almost destroyed an institution with that movie.
Because you try to consider how canonical that film is compared to the first two.
All you have to know is that Coppola only made it because he was broke.
Yeah.
That's it. No, that's all you need to know about that film.
Now, with this film, I don't think it tarnishes the first one. And part of that is because this film is so forgettable.
It is forgettable.
And that is a pretty big, like, insult to the film, but it's true. Like, it's just a very forgettable film.
Well, let's talk about the third reason why this wasn't better, right? Which was Jack Nicholson. He's the star. He's the director. He was the secondary screenwriter for this. He is the primary reason why this film ultimately got made. If he had not stepped up and offered to direct this would have never happened. So, for better or worse, this is Jack Nicholson's fault.
Yeah. Look, I don't blame Jack. Like, one of the all-time great Jack Nicholson, I don't blame him for wanting to direct a movie. I can see it.
No.
Yeah. And I could totally see from his perspective, I have the opportunity to really, drive my own, basically own my journey being like a actor and a director. Because basically it's what Clint Eastwood did, right? But Jack Nicholson did not do it.
Clint Eastwood
is one of a kind.
And Clint Eastwood didn't just do it occasionally. When he made the decision to get into directing, he went 100% full throttle with it.
Right.
Nicholson did not.
No, but it's why you have to look at something like this and just say, dude, stay in your lane, don't do it. It's a bad idea. We need
to get to Eastwood eventually. You know what the first movie he directed was, right? Right. It's a Bay Area movie, buddy.
Oh, right. It was, I have it lined up. It's the sequel to Dirty Harry.
No. Play Misty for me.
Oh, okay.
I don't want to make this into an anti-Nicholson thing, But the elephant in the room, man, he's just not a director. This film needed a real director to work.
Yeah, I don't want to. Yeah, I don't know what else to really say other than like I agree with you. It's just very, very clear that this was not well directed. The benefit of having a film, especially like a sequel to Chinatown, having a good director, is clear vision. This didn't have vision, and you felt it in every single aspect of this film. Mishmash characters, unclear motivations, confusing plot, and how it's delivered story wise. And you have a decent director in there who just has experience within the medium of being a director, you're already doing way better than what happened with this film.
Yeah, this needed like a Barry Levinson or someone like that. You know what I mean? Just an experienced hand. And
Yeah, like just someone that knows structure in
yeah,
that way.
Mel Gibson? No, just kidding. He would have been too young to direct this at the time. I mean, look, I respect Nicholson for trying because, credit to him. He wasn't doing this for a cash grab. Like, he had to know this probably wasn't going to make him a lot of money. He did it
No,
out of the passion. He had real passion for this. And that's why, I don't want to be too harsh on him. And yet, by directing this and taking it upon himself to rewrite an incomplete script and be the star of it, he bit off more than he could chew.
yeah, and it's just clear with the product that we see on stage that this also just wasn't a good role for him.
We can talk about that now. This is the low-hanging fruit. He was too old for this. Too old and too fat.
Look, the character was written to be a World War II veteran that had just finished serving in the war and is back on the detective beat. Now, no one is convinced that his character is someone that just served and is youthful and engaged, and that is not who Jack Nicholson was physically in this film.
He was 36 in the first film, and he's 52 at the time of filming this. How much heavier would you say he is in this film from the first one? 50 pounds?
At least one more Jack Nicholson.
You're right about the time jump. It's supposed to be 10 years after the first film. He looks 20 years older. He's got a pot belly. You're telling me that his character was supposed to be serving in World War II 2 years before the events of this film? Like, forget about it.
This is where just whoever was attached to this film and said this was a good idea or like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, it's on them, Jack Nicholson, of course, he attaches himself to direct. He acts in the role. Studio executives see everything that's going on and they say, just release it. So I feel like at a certain point, like due to studio obligations to even release the film, they're just like, screw it. Let's release it in August. We know it's not going to do great. Let it happen. Because otherwise, I don't know why you would ever want to put one of the best actors of all time in such an unflattering light.
The production notes on Wikipedia says that he gained weight for the role.
Like, that's just crazy. Like,
you know what this reminded me of? When we reviewed Hannibal and we're like, Anthony Hopkins is so much fatter in this film than Silence of the Lambs. It's detrimental to the film. Like, when you're talking about the foundation of the role, when you don't buy the character physically, it's real tough. Like, earlier in the film when Madeline Stowe's character starts smashing the windows in his office and we see Gittes running from the parking lot, watching Nicholson jog was painful.
Yeah. And this was his point in his career that I think he realized really quickly there are only certain roles that he could still take on that physically make sense for him. And he proved it, right? Like, he would take on either roles where he is like befitting of his age range and his physical appearance, whether that's like one of the, a more tenured general than the army or an asshole in As Good as It Gets.
I also think he could have gotten in better shape for the role. He just didn't want to.
Do you think so?
What was stopping him from losing weight and being thin? He could have.
Just giving no Fs. Like, I
think how much better he could have sold this role if he was just 30 or 40 pounds lighter.
I've never been convinced that Jack Nicholson's the kind of actor that's going to hire a personal trainer so that way he could be in more roles.
Well, I mean, that's my point. I mean, it was never going to happen. It was only going to happen in some alternate universe.
Yeah, and that's why, like, the flip side of that, Jack Nicholson knew what kind of roles he'd be comfortable doing. And he was fine. The rest of his career was fine. He didn't have a long career after that, but he was fine.
And then we have the sex scene. That's the other unbelievable part of this film. Between his age and his physical appearance, it's just not believable that young, hot women would be throwing themselves at him. It's just not.
Yeah, it's why I wasn't really convinced at the end of Anger Management that his character had seduced Adam Sandler's love interest.
Good call. That's another film we're going to cover. That's on our list. Did you find that? Did you find that movie disappointing?
I did. It's not the funniest Sandler film
And
from
it
the
should have been.
2000s,
It should have been.
but he's also made like a ton of movies, so it's whatever.
Yeah. Oh, we're going to cover Anger Management because on paper that should have been brilliant, and
For sure.
and it's okay. But yeah. So this also the sex scene is weirdly written. Like Madeline Stowe's character, she just listened to a wire recording of her husband being murdered, and the way she responds to it is, "I'm going to have sex with this investigator."
Doesn't make sense. It's very uncomfortable. The way that the dialogue is written throughout, it just is it feels very unrealistic, right? You just sit there while I drink some water.
Oh, you mean when he's like, stick your ass up in the air and don't move?
What?
Do you think Jack Nicholson was like actually winded in real life when he did that, and that was just improvised dialogue?
I would love it if that was if that was what happened. That kind of adds a bit. That paints the scene a bit nicer.
Also, do you think they were really drinking whiskey on set? Because I do.
Yeah, I can believe that.
I can see him directing the scene. Someone takes a drink and they're like, "Wait, is this real whiskey?" And he's just like, "I thought it would add a layer of authenticity if we actually got drunk."
Yeah, you gonna rat on us?
Does anyone have an 8-ball?
Look, okay, you just put it on the list and we'll get it. The studio will say yes and we'll be fine.
Listen, well, we need to be wrapping this up shortly because the Rockets are in town tonight and I've got court seats.
Look, I love this Kobe kid.
Oh,
No, Kobe wouldn't be playing in 1990.
That was peak Lakers, though. That was the peak Showtime Lakers.
That was Showtime.
So probably during filming to this is when they got swept in the finals by the Pistons. So he was probably upset by that.
Yeah, I'd be pissed too.
Yeah. Nobody liked the Pistons.
The Bad Boys?
No. It's one of the most unlikable teams of all time.
Yeah. No one likes Isaiah Thomas to this day.
No one liked him then. No one likes him now.
Yeah.
Still an all-time great player, but do you think Nicholson's performance in this film is good?
No. I mean, okay, very simply, no.
No,
but
I mean, I agree. It's
yeah,
he's fine, but
he's fine.
I also don't think it's good because the first one, if you told me the first one is his best role, I wouldn't disagree with you.
Yeah, he's done far better. But to me, this felt like an obligation to make the film, and he was also working with very half-baked material. So every line delivery
that he wrote.
Every scene that he wrote,
and
so
directed.
Every single line delivery scene, it just feels, it just felt hollow. It just felt slow. It just felt
perfunctory.
Labored comes to mind.
Did anyone else in the cast impress you? Because it's a pretty good cast on paper. There's a lot of solid actors in it.
The only other actor that I like was Harvey Keitel, but I think part of that is just because this was also like at his peak.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting role for him. It's pretty atypical for him.
But yeah, have you ever seen like The Bad Lieutenant?
Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah, that's a weird one.
It's a very weird one.
Yeah,
he's done a lot of weird roles. I mean, he's known for that, and it's one of his like strengths, I suppose.
It's always weird for me to think that beneath his like shirt, like the dude's ripped, right?
Yeah.
Wouldn't imagine it. He was probably ripped in Pulp Fiction, huh?
Probably. The Wolf.
Yeah.
I mean, I like his performance in here, but it didn't elevate the film for me.
No. And that's the thing. It's like, I really think that Nicholson, because he's such a great actor, he can get away with just delivering the lines as he needs to. And it's fine. I think like if the scenes are of him just having a conversation with someone, it's fine. When he goes crazy Nicholson and shoves the gun inside that dude's mouth.
Suck on it.
It's weird. But he probably just went with the assignment, which is whatever he gave himself, which was deliver some bad dialogue, and this is what happens in the scene.
I liked Meg Tilly's performance.
Very minimal performance. Fair, to be fair.
Madeline Stowe, who I really like in other movies.
Mm-hmm.
Her character here confused me, but I really do like she's great in Last of the Mohicans and 12 Monkeys.
Yeah,
she's good. I really like her.
I think that her character motivations made zero sense, but she's fine.
Yeah. Richard Farnsworth, he has the one cameo that I don't know if he was supposed to be memorable or menacing, but He's got that twangy Southern accent. It doesn't really come across as villainous.
Yeah, look, it's just, I think up and down, no actor really had a good shot of doing a good job in this film, just because it's one of those cases where if an actor told me while working on this we didn't have a lot to work with, I'd believe them.
Have you seen either one of the other films that Nicholson has directed?
I saw the Western one.
Any good?
No. I saw it a long time ago because I had heard that he directed and was a bit disappointed.
I think if we're assessing why this film wasn't better, it's pretty easy to break down, right? Like it was a mess of a film to make. The storytelling was incomplete. It was all off. It was directed by Jack Nicholson, who's not a director. It was mostly written by Jack Nicholson, who's not a writer. And he also happened to be the star of the film. And physically, he was just not able to pull it off.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add before we wrap this up and give our ratings? Like, do you want to talk about your favorite Nicholson performances, maybe?
Sure, I mean, that's a fun little positive segue into it.
You want to
I love
bring things up a little bit?
one of my favorite performances by Nicholson. I love him in The Shining. I think like that's my favorite performance of his. It's what even very, very early on, it's what made me fall in love with film. Just seeing his character's descent into insanity is, I think, unmatched to this day.
Stephen King would disagree with you.
I mean, Stephen King just hates that movie.
He does hate that. Yeah, that's up there for me.
Yeah,
I mean, the original Chinatown is an easy choice. I mean, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Yep, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is great.
The Last
even
Detail.
Some of the As Good as It Gets, A Few Good Men.
Oh, he's incredible in A Few Good Men.
Even films that I don't necessarily think are like his best films, but like are iconic roles for him, Witches of Eastwick.
Oh yeah. I really like his cameo in Broadcast News.
Yeah, Broadcast. Oh my gosh. I thought that I can see why he got nominated for About Schmidt, but it was kind of in that point in his career that it was like he's going to retire soon.
Yeah, I mean, what's his last iconic role? Probably The Departed. I don't think he's great in that.
I think that
it's okay.
It was good to just see getting the most out of him, because he's not in the film like a ton. And
I mean, his big role.
It's a big role, but like I'd say the core focus on that film is Matt Damon and Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yeah.
So it almost feels like kind of a passing of the torch to like this next generation of lead actors.
Honestly, my favorite thing about Nicholson is, unlike some actors who we've talked about on this podcast, he knew when to hang it up. He retired at just the right time. It really is one of the most underrated things that a legend like him could do. Think about it. We never saw washed up Nicholson. I mean, he's physically too old for the role that we're talking about in this film today, but he as an actor wasn't washed up at all. Think about it. He was in The Departed. I think he was in one other film after that called The Bucket List, and that was it. He was done.
Yeah, and that was like more of a let's get some money Morgan Freeman.
Yeah.
And Morgan Freeman's like, sure, that's a really good idea.
Yeah. Jack Nicholson wasn't 80 years old, still getting women pregnant and having to pay for divorces.
Looking at you, Robert De Niro.
Yeah, and Pacino.
Yeah, Pacino.
How much are you dreading having to cover The Irishman?
Dude, that's just not a good movie. It is just so, such a bad movie.
We have it on the list. I don't even know when we're going to get to that because I can't bring myself to watch that again. I still haven't been able to finish it. I've tried watching it 3 times. I've never made it all the way through.
It's just bad.
It's bad.
Now, did you ever watch Nicholson in Little Shop of Horrors?
The original?
The original 1960 Little Shop of Horrors.
I've seen clips from it on YouTube.
Yeah, it's black and white.
Yeah, I've never seen the whole thing.
It's just entertaining. You see like a young, fresh Jack Nicholson in this role. I really love what they did with the film when they turned it into the musical from the 1980s.
Mm-hmm.
With a film score, or with, I don't know if Alan Menken did the score, but he did the lyrics.
I believe he did.
Yeah, and amazing to see what he did with Little Shop of Horrors, but even just to see Nicholson in the role, it's just so fun. It's just early Nicholson, and just an example of me of just this dude always has this kind of like very laid back attitude in his acting, but not in a way that feels lazy. just kind of in a
No.
way that feels comfortable.
Was he in Tommy? There's another one we're going to cover. Well, we could ramble about Nicholson all day. I think it's time we stopped talking about the two Jakes and gave our ratings. I think the original Chinatown was just impossible to recreate. I don't know if there was any possibility of this being good because the first film's like lightning in a bottle. You can't will a sequel into existence like this, which is what they really tried to do here. I wrote down that this is a misadventure. It had so many things working against it before they even started filming. There were so many delays. There was so much soap opera drama. There was just so many problems behind the scenes. And when they finally made it, I don't doubt Nicholson's passion for this, but it seems like everybody else who was involved reluctantly participated. The studio, they didn't believe in it. It was directed by somebody who wasn't a director, who also did a lot of the writing despite not being a writer either, who also happened to be the star despite being too old and too fat to really pull it off. I think there are a handful of interesting scenes, and I think there are some interesting performances. The concept of the story is interesting, but there's nothing about the execution that is. As a sequel to Chinatown, it's a total waste of time because it's pretty incoherent. It doesn't contribute anything to the first film. It should have never been made in the first place. Like if you had to sum it up for me, Anton, this just should have never been made. As a standalone story, it's even worse because it relies so much on the first film. And if you haven't seen the first film, this is basically incomprehensible. This is a total mess. I can't recommend this to anyone. I was trying to search for something positive that I could cite to recommend this to anyone who hasn't seen it. I can't even get there. The Godfather 3 parallels are right, but this is even worse than that, I think. Nobody needed this. Nobody wanted this apart from Nicholson, Town, and Bob Evans, and the latter two eventually dropped out. And the worst part was nobody cared. People care even less now. Like Lieutenant Escobar tells Jake in the first film, forget it. I really wanted to be kinder for this. I don't know how I can give this anything but an F. I don't know. I'm going to give you this opportunity to keep me honest. If you think this film deserves above an F, please try to convince me because there's not a single thing in here that I liked or worked for me. This is an F.
Oof. This film is a mess. We've already gone on to talk about why these different elements of the film just don't stand on its own. It tries to rely on its prestige of being a sequel to one of the greatest films of all time, to an actor who should have given the role to someone else or should have realized it was not going to be a successful role for him to be in. And behind it all, the production history, which I hope you remember everything that we talked about, everything leading up to this film did not set it up for success. It ruined a friendship across three very successful men in Hollywood, and it has been mired for years and years to not release. And by the time it finally released, everything that you see on screen makes total sense for everything that we know behind the scenes, whether it's a proper director was never put in place. It was written without a proper screenwriter or fully half-baked ideas. It just makes total sense why this film didn't work. The most fun that I had was being able to just dissect that because this is a clear example of everything that went wrong. And you can see it on screen, and it shows that even great actors like Jack Nicholson are not impervious to the downfalls of the studios or things or what happens around them. You can't just lean on your past works and hope that that's going to be successful at the box office. And maybe Jack Nicholson knew it. Maybe he knew that this was not going to be a very successful film, but dang it, he was going to still try and put it out. And if so, well, we all make mistakes. And I think that Nicholson definitely learned from his, because you look at you look at every single role after this, he's never trying to act as someone in his 30s ever again. So look, it's very simple. This is just not a good film. This is a very insulting film to the original Chinatown. This film is an F, and I really don't recommend it to anyone. It is just not entertaining. It is not rewatchable. Learning more about it is more entertaining than actually watching it.
You'll never revisit this, right?
No,
there's no point.
Absolutely not.
He never directed again either.
Yeah, and in another universe, maybe this film succeeded.
Well, that's it for the two Jakes. Nothing else to say, really. We are just about done with season 7, Anton. We got one more film that you'll be hearing next week as our finale, which is Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, and then it's on to season 8.
All right, well, let's keep this train going.
Yeah. We don't take breaks. So
Yep,
the week
so,
after this, you'll hear Harry Potter. The week after that, you'll get our recap episode. And the week after that, it's right into the next season.
And so just to prepare for the next Harry Potter film, I'll just stand outside and wait for the night bus.
If you need to.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't think very highly of the driver.
Ernie?
Yeah.
The glasses? Yeah. Well, yeah, next week it's Harry Potter. See you then.
See you then.